Welcome to Keith's Off-Grid Camper Adventure.
Voila.
You cannot pee with too much enthusiasm. Pee with poise and poo with pride. We'll make that our slogan for this video. Join us on this adventure by hitting the subscribe button and following along as we adjust and prepare for making it through a winter in Vermont. Well, hi there, my name's David and welcome back to our channel. If you're new, welcome to the topic, which is today composting toilets. Why are we installing a composting toilet inside a camper? And the simple reason is because you cannot have a regular water-based toilet in a camper going through winter. The water is stored in a tank under the camper. It's gonna freeze. Vermont winters hit below zero. The wind chill takes it way below that. There's just no way that you can keep running water in a camper. So we need to come up with a solution. And Keith was very excited about the solution of buying and installing a composting toilet. Honestly, I didn't know anything about what a composting toilet even meant. So he described it to me as basically a mobile toilet that you see sometimes at concerts or at fairs or out and about where people move these in and then move them out, except they don't come with the chemicals. So I thought about that and that sounded like an oxymoron to me. How can you have one of those without the chemicals? I mean, they are chemically based, but that was the way he described it. We're gonna do all of this, but we're going to do it naturally. Now, Keith is totally into the eco, organic, environmental, soil fertility science. So for him to use a composting toilet where you separate the poo from the pee was really exciting because, as he says, and I didn't realize this, nature does it that way. So in nature, never is the poo and the pee mixed together. So if you look at a deer or any wild animal, they poo in one area and then they pee in another. If you look at the plumbing, it's just very simple, and to not be too graphic, the poo goes this way and the pee goes that way. That's just how it works naturally. But modern society, we've merged them in a toilet and then we flush it and then it goes away and we hope to never see it again. But that affects odors and it affects decomposition of the fecal matter or the human waste. And so in a composting toilet, what you're doing is you're separating the two and you're allowing the solids or the poo to fall into a tank with peat moss and for that to decompose in a natural process. And then the urine, which goes into a tank, you dispose of that separately and then you don't deal with the issues of odors and slow down decomposition process. Up front, I just want to say that I was privileged or honored with the first use of the composting toilet. And not because I wanted to, but just because I had a need to. And so I just want to say up front that really the use of a composting toilet is almost identical to a regular water-based toilet. There is not a whole lot of difference. I mean, the design is designed to deal with the two elements in the way that you would normally deal with them even in a toilet. It's just that it separates them. So your solids go down and your liquids go forward. The only thing that I feel that you should be aware of is that when you do pee, it does go forward into a funnel-like device. And with that, you need to basically exercise a little restraint, if you will. You cannot pee with too much enthusiasm, because if you do, it'll basically splash and come back up and hit you on your legs or your pants. And unless you really want that, I would recommend that you avoid it. So pee with some restraint, or as we could say, pee with some poise, and you'll be fine. But aside from that, toilet paper goes right down in the tank where you know, your waste goes. You do have to use special biodegradable toilet paper. which is not that big of a deal. It is thinner and not nearly as Charmin-like as you might be used to, but it does the same job. So a composting toilet does not have any difference as far as an experience, whether it's a man or a woman. It's a great design, it's comfortable, it's clean, there are no odors, it functionally works great. The only thing I would recommend is that you do pee with poise and poo with pride. The only requirement for a composting toilet is really just a little bit of electricity. It does use a 24/7 fan, which is extremely quiet, uses very little energy, but it does move the air and circulates the air, which means not only does it need a constant supply of electricity for this fan, it needs to be vented. And so we devised a system where we vented it actually through the tank, and we'll show you that process as well. But for now, let's go right ahead and let's jump in and see how we remove and how we install a new composting toilet. So the removal is really quite simple. Here it is. This is the water flushing toilet. And as you can see, there are 2 bolts holding it down on this side. And then as we make our way to the other side, you can see that there are another 2 here for a total of just 4 screws. That's the only 4 screws that hold it down to the ground. We removed the screw cap, and you can see that on the left there, just on the floor. And then Keith used an open crescent wrench to just loosen the bolt. You can see here that we loosened the back 2 screws, and Keith is finishing up on the last bolt before we tackle the water line. First, we take off the cover and we identify the supply line. That's the one coming out of the floor going to the toilet. Interestingly, the water pressure is only on when you turn the water pump on, and that switch is in the kitchen by the sink. Nope, that's not the one we want to disconnect. So without any water pressure, you can disconnect the water supply line without any worries. Yep, loosening it works better. There is some water that drips from it, but nothing to worry about since we have no pressure. And there you have it, a disconnected water flushing toilet ready to be moved out of the way. And all you're left with is a sewer hole in the floor with the water supply line. You can see here that we removed the plastic ring on the floor where the water line comes in through the floor. There's a rubber seal here that can be removed as well. And then the attachment that is screwed into the floor. There are 4 screws. The threaded attachment is screwed into the tank and needs to be unscrewed and removed. Once you get it started, it should be really easy. We did go under the camper to look at the tank and how to reconnect the venting pipes and look for some electricity. But it turned out to be a really cramped space, and it turned into being much more complicated of a project than what we were hoping for. But the one thing that we learned that we thought was really interesting is that the tank is actually made out of plastic, and that was important. So we made the decision not to take the tank out and to find other electrical connections. So we cleaned the floor, we plugged the water line so it won't leak when the water pump is turned back on in the kitchen, but that'll be in spring. There won't be any running water in the winter. Any sitting water will be solid because it'll be frozen. So there won't be any water in the sink, there won't be any water in the shower, and there won't be any water in the toilet. The next thing we want to do is to plug the tank hole to block any odors from coming back into the camper. We have a 3-inch plug right here, and it fits nicely, except that the wing nuts stick above the floor level. We could remedy this by adding a floorboard to elevate the floor just enough so that the toilet sits above these wing nuts. But we decided instead to just flick the wing nut around and put it on the bottom. So as you can see here, we just screwed it in, and the wing nut is now on the bottom of the plug, and it'll go inside the tank. Again, the tank will not be under any pressure, so it's really just there to block. So we tried it, and it was a little too loose here, so we tightened it up some more. And then it was a little tight, so we just had to gently hammer it into place. And there you go. You can see the two L brackets that are installed there. Those are for the composting toilet. So Keith wanted to install his toilet so that he had more room for his knees. Originally the toilet, and it's in a camper, so it's a tight space, so his knees were kind of hitting the cabinet on the right. So what he decided to do was just shift it ever so slightly sideways so that his knees would go more into the space. So in order to do that, we had to move the placement of our brackets. And so what you can see is that these brackets, instead of installing them so that they went inward underneath, I installed them so that they went outward. And the reason I did that is that if you look here, you'll see that the bracket came really close to the hole. And so I was a little nervous about that not holding well. So we did them this way just as a safety measure. And it doesn't change anything, for really just cosmetics. And who's looking at the bottom of your toilet anyways? So now that we've removed the toilet and we've installed the brackets and we kind of see the components that we're dealing with, let's look at the toilet itself. So this is the toilet that Keith purchased. This bad boy costs about $1,000. Now he researched it, and you could buy a little more expensive, you could buy considerably cheaper. But considering the importance that it plays in your daily life, Keith decided to go with a greater quality toilet so that there are no issues, there are no mechanical breakdowns. He can be assured that it's going to work and it's going to last. So $1,000 seems like a lot to me, considering it's just molded plastic or fiberglass, but you know, you don't want to have to deal with any issues. So here are the parts that it came with. Again, you see there's not very much, and this is the toilet itself. It has a cover and a seat, nothing unusual there. The inside of the bowl has a door flap you open before you start. The two holes at the front are for the liquids. The tank opens easily like this. You can see the lever here to mix the solids and the peat moss. The peat tank is on the front. It comes out very easily. You empty that quite a bit, unless, of course, you make use of the outdoors. So the tank is opened and filled with peat moss, up to about halfway. Now this whole bag of peat moss costs about $16. And this bag will last you easily up to 2 years. Peat moss feels a little bit just like dirt, really. It's very loose, has very little odor. So here's the lever that you turn, and you can see Keith is doing it there, and then it mixes the peat moss with the human waste, and that's what will mix it to and cause the decomposition to take place. So now back to the installation. What we had to do was we went underneath and we went all the way to the back of his camper and found the electrical switch that controlled the levers to balance the camper, and we drew juice from that, and we ran the wires all the way back into the bathroom, and you can see them here. All we did was splice them and then put a plastic connector and some electrical tape on them. Now we felt that was safe enough, even though it's in a bathroom, because it is a temporary winter setup, and considering that there's no running water anywhere, we felt comfortable with doing that. In this particular clip, you can no longer see the water supply line because we pushed it into the floor. And we used a 1 1/4 inch drill bit to create a hole big enough to slide this plastic pipe into that hole. We decided to vent the composting toilet through the existing tank. So we poked a hole into the tank and we were feeding the exhaust line into the tank because the existing tank has a venting system that goes straight up and through the roof. And that's what we wanted. I know you can do some variations where you could just go through the floor and then vent it below, but we weren't interested in having any odors kind of lingering below or even to the side. So we were really interested in getting that done. So when you're drilling, I would really recommend that you go very, very slowly. And the reason for that is because the plastic will give and you will lock up your drill bit and you won't get a nice circular hole. So what you want to do is just go really slowly so that the tip of that drill bit pokes a hole through it, and then the groove that's around your drill bit will just bore into that plastic and make a really nice circular pattern, and eventually it will drill a really nice circular hole, and then that plastic will just drop into the tank and give you access to the tank with a nice circular hole. Once you've accomplished that, we're checking that it fits into both holes. We used a screw to connect the pipe to the floor mount. Here you can hear it snap into place. Then we screwed the floor mount into the floor and made sure that the plastic tube fitting fit over the screw we used to connect the downpipe. Here you can see the finished install of all the components on the floor that will be connected to the composting toilet. Keith installs it, connecting those L brackets to the bottom of the tank, and then the venting hose and the power, and
voila.
And there you have it, a finished install of a composting toilet with venting going through the existing tank and using the existing venting system that goes up through the ceiling and vents the odors up into the air so that you never have the discomfort of having that around your living space. And number two, not raising the floor so that you have to adjust for the height of those wingtips on that plug, but instead reversing those so that you can just install it flat on the floor. So there you have it. That's the install of a composting toilet. It is not complicated. It just requires venting and electricity. I live in Chicago, and so when I took the flight from Chicago to Vermont to go help my brother with this project, I sat next to a very nice woman about my age, academically trained and intelligent. And so we had this conversation about what I was going to Vermont to do. And she was totally with me. She was totally excited about it because people in Vermont tend to be that way. They're pro-ecology, they're pro all of that stuff. So it was really great. But what I noticed was that once I mentioned a composting toilet, the conversation came to an immediate halt. And her reaction was, well, I was with you until you got to that. And then I'm done. That's not going to work for me. I need a regular washroom or else I'm out of there. I mean, it was really quite a shocking reaction because I didn't have a reaction to it, really. I didn't really know what it meant, but she had an adverse reaction to that conversation. So, interestingly, and as a challenge, any of you guys out on a date, if you want a ticket to an exit from a conversation, bring up composting toilet, and I think you'll be pleased to find out that you have an exit strategy with that. With this project done, we are one step closer to being ready for Keith to make it through a winter. Our last project that we know of is going to be installing a wood-burning stove inside his camper. Until next time, may your life be a great adventure and one that doesn't shy away from using a composting toilet. So remember the 4 P's of composting toilets. Pee with poise and poo with pride. We'll see you next time.